I'd like to call this special meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewish, Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales,
Present.
Councilmember Mitch Lindemann,
Here.
Councilmember Dania Acosta,
Present.
Councilmember Ray Shelton, Councilmember Michael Valdenegro,
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva,
Here.
City Manager Arno Urquijo, City Attorney Dennis Fitzgibbons,
Present.
City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa.
Present.
Thank you. And for the record, Mayor Pro Tempore Morales, Mayor Donald Hewish and Councilmember Ray Shelton are excused.
Thank you. Next item is persons wishing to address the council in writing or verbally on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any requests?
Not for this meeting, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Item number 4 is discussion on public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing is to allow public participation regarding the CDBG CV amendment to the annual action plan. Is there anyone here that would like to say something on this plan? Or actually, I need to let Ms. Zenia.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. Just like to summarize what this public hearing has been scheduled for. So City of Douglas is an entitlement CDBG community. And under CDBG guidelines, we are required to submit any substantial amendments to our annual action plans or consolidated plans to HUD. And we had previously allocated CARES Act funding that we received through CDBG. We received 2 separate allocations totaling to $200,518. And those had been previously allocated for certain projects. One of those projects, unfortunately, was not able to be brought out by the subrecipient, which was St. Vincent de Paul Community Garden. So the amount that was allocated for that was $22,913.53. And we are proposing to reallocate those funds for contactless water stations to be placed at public facilities within the low and mod income census tracts to include parks, aquatic center, visitor center, and potentially other locations. So staff is recommending approval of this. This is the opportunity for the public to provide any comments on the recommended reallocation of funds.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. First, I'm going to ask council if there's any questions or comments they'd like to provide regarding the annual action plan.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales, I would like to ask just a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Lindemann, of course.
How many of these contactless water fountains will that money get us?
Well, we have several options and it just depends on the water station. The cost for each station can range from about $4,000 to over $8,000 a piece. So it just depends on what features we want on them. If we go with the very basic ones, which are about $4,000, we can probably purchase about 8 or 9 of them, probably 8, because then we do have to pay admin fees for the project as well.
Okay, and that includes installation and everything, I imagine.
Potentially,
Yeah.
yes.
And then just briefly, I'm just thinking, do we have like an idea of where they could be placed?
Internal discussions with staff, indicated, Jocassee Park, potentially Castro Park, Aquatic Center, Visitor Center. We already have some water stations at Placita Park.
Mhm.
And other locations in the city, but, these would be placed close to where a lot of physical activity is taking place so that people can refill their water bottles. People who walk around the park, for example, or they're playing basketball behind the aquatic center.
Airport Park? Yeah. For the soccer players?
Airport Park is not within a low and moderate income census tract, so it
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
qualify.
Oh, okay.
So we are only looking at those locations that are CDBG eligible.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the council? Mr. Valdenegro?
Ms. Gonzalez, is the baseball field, is that city owned or is it city? Public schools property?
Councilman Valdenegro, Mayor Pro Tem Morales, which baseball field? Sorry.
Copper King Stadium.
Copper King is owned by the city in joint use agreement with the Douglas Unified School District.
So that could be an option.
It would be an eligible location, yes.
So that way the football field can get it and the people walking around the track can get it. So I think,
Eligible, yes.
thank you.
Anyone else? Is there anyone in the public that would like to address or make a comment on this annual action plan? If not, we'll wait a couple of minutes to see if anyone else would like to make a comment on this. Give it a couple of minutes. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, there being none, we'll move on to item number 5, which is adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn our special meeting?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adjourn our special meeting.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Lindemann and a second by Councilmember Acosta to adjourn our meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned at 5:24 for our next special.
Mayor Pro Tempore, it's time.
I'd like to call the special meeting of February 28th to order, please. Roll call.
Mayor Donald Hewish, Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales,
Present.
Councilmember Mitch Lindemann,
Here.
Councilmember Dania Acosta,
Present.
Councilmember Ray Shelton, Councilmember Michael Montenegro,
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva,
Here.
City Manager Honor Kiko,
Present.
City Attorney Dennis Fitzgibbons,
Present.
City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa.
Present.
Thank you. And for the record, Mayor Pro Tempore, Mayor Donald Hewish and Councilmember Ray Shelton are excused.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next item, I would like to ask council to stand for a moment of silence for the passing of Council Member Grijalva's grandmother, Mrs. Mariana Montaño. Thank you. Next item. Thank you. Is persons wishing to address the council in writing or verbally on any items not on the agenda? Do we have any requests, Ms. Sandra?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tempore Morales.
We have on the phone Ms. Cheryl Knott.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Ms. Knott, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm asking that the city of Douglas prevent the Douglas Industrial Development Authority from going ahead with plans to issue bonds to benefit Riverview's operations in the Wilcox Basin. The Douglas IDA has no jurisdiction and no authority in the Wilcox Basin. The Wilcox Basin is one of the 3 most threatened groundwater basins in Arizona, according to the Arizona Department of Water Resources. Riverview pumps 110,000 acre-feet of groundwater every year, and 1 acre-foot is over 325,000 gallons. So that's a lot of water coming out of the most threatened basin, one of the most threatened in the state. If the Douglas Industrial Development Authority partners with Riverview, then Douglas will be aiding and abetting the destruction of the Wilcox Basin. Douglas's groundwater is protected by your new AMA. In the Wilcox Basin, we have no such protection, and you have no right to make things even worse by helping Riverview drain our aquifer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knott. Next individual is Christian Sawyer. If you could please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. My name is Christian Sawyer. I previously resided at 510 East Global Lane, but I just bought new land, which doesn't have a registered address yet, but it's just further up Leslie Canyon Road. So I'm here today because I imagine there may be a number of items about which I would address this council, and I thought a good first step would be to introduce myself. So I wanted to say a little bit about who I am and what I'm engaged in the greater Douglas area. So I've been living up on Leslie Canyon for the last 4 years. And until about a year and a half ago, I was working for a engineering firm who worked with a grant from the Department of Energy to develop what's called solar over canal technology. And that's implementing solar photovoltaics over canals. So I was a techno-economic researcher, technical writer, and a grant writer for that technology, which has recently been contracted to be installed at the Gila River Indian community over their canal off of I-10. And I helped them with their grant applications to get that project going. So I like looking at big, interesting systems, and I have an interest in sustainability. But I left that job to focus on more immediate local concerns, which is groundwater. And I campaigned for the AMA and had to quit my job because it's such a demanding project. But I've spent the last year and a half researching our local groundwater issues and doing everything I can to make sure that we have a reliable source of groundwater for future generations. And as some people here know, I helped to bring down Arizona State University and the Babbitt Center for Land and Water Management to host it's a long title, exploratory scenario planning process workshop for the Sulphur Springs Valley, which was about 50 important decision makers, including people from the offices of the city of Douglas. And then after that workshop, we created a partnership called the Sulphur Springs Water Alliance, which includes, again, members from the city of Douglas, from the city of Wilcox, from the county, bigger decision makers within the agricultural community and ranching community, environmentalists, NGOs, and some regular residents like myself. And I've been the interim chair and coordinator for that partnership for the last few months, but we just hired a professional coordinator and we'll be electing chairs and have a whole roster of water management solutions, which we hope to collaborate on. I will be using my freed up time to work on a new organization, a 501c3 called the Stewards of the Springs, which is just got registered recently. And I'll be working with farmers like Ed Curry in the Wilcox Basin to do preliminary research and grant applications for specialty low water use crops so that our local farmers can respond to decreased water use. I should have picked both meetings to make my full introduction. I'll just finish by saying it's a pleasure to meet you. I hope we have many more opportunities to talk and try to create a sustainable future here in the greater Douglas area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. Next, we have Joanna Seeley. Joanna Seeley. If you could just state your name and address.
I'm Joanna Seeley, 3357 East Red Stag Road, Pierce, Arizona, 85625. And I'm the chairperson for People for the Playa. We're a new form group, which are trying to make aware that there's a lithium mine coming into the Wilcox Playa. And I'm here before you this evening to oppose the $15 million bond that is being requested by Riverview LLC. For some reason, your IDA has approved it, and then it has to go to the Cochise Board of Supervisors after your approval here. It is not the best interest for any of Sulphur Springs Valley. From what I read in part from the Industrial Development Authority about the bond, it is for acquisition, construction, and equipping the dairy production facility, including supporting the feedlot. Well, I'm not against general dairy farms. This mega dairy is just plain too much. Just in the past 5 years, I've lived in the Sulphur Springs Valley, Wilcox Water Basin. I have seen Riverview buy up at least 8 farms and ranches along the Kansas Settlement Road and Highway 191 north of Elfrida. That's not including the roads that feather off from Kansas Settlement Road Highway. Kansas Settlement Cotton Gin is no longer. Bonita Bean is now owned by Riverview. How much land do they need? Everything that they produce goes to their cattle. It doesn't help anything in our region. And it brings me to another issue caused by the mega dairy: dry wells, residents needing to haul water, drilling deeper or new wells, fissures and subsidence. Parker Ranch Road, Highway 191, and personal property in Deer Haven have all had fissures in the last 2 years because of too much water being drawn out of the aquifer. Our house is cracking because of this activity. Our 40 acres is 8 miles south to the south of Coronado Dairy. The wind usually blows from the south-southwest, but we can still smell the dairy. We don't have a lawn or garden and have lost multiple trees because of the fear of running out of water. We did not fill all 3 water tanks for our horses at the same time. And I just ask you to oppose this bond. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sealy. Next, we have Diana Lamar.
Hello,
Your name and address.
Diana Lamar, 1303 F Avenue. I wanted to speak not about the concerns, although I care about them, with regard to the water issues and the effect that approval of this bond only incentivizes the expansion of Riverview Dairy, but about my concerns, which I've expressed to IDA member and staff, that the IDA meeting on February 16th there may have been open meeting law violations that occurred. I have a very long list. I won't bore you with that, but I do have concerns about that. I have concerns that due diligence did not occur and that best practices were not followed at the very least. Prior meetings, even as early as 1 week prior to this hastily called meeting, stated the IDA's own inexperience in bonds, that they were being pushed to approve the bond. There was absolutely no indication that there was support from the directors to pass this bond. Quite the contrary. When the vote occurred, there was no idea why the vote was unanimous. Not a clue. There were no deliberations, a few questions. There was no reason given in the executive session motion as to the reason for going into executive session. There was no discussion for the public after executive session. There was an attorney present, and it was completely unclear who he represented for half of the meeting. It turns out he represented the IDA. I have no knowledge that he is retained or contracted. He was rather aggressive. He shut down discussion. He seemed to be conducting the meeting instead of the IDA. And he really had a conflict of interest in that he is going to make a significant amount of money if this deal goes through. It's normal for IDAs to have counsel, private counsel, that helps guide them prior to taking this kind of step. You normally have private counsel that guides you, and then you choose a bond attorney depending on the industry, for example. So I care about the IDA, and I care about the city. I care about the reputation of the IDA, and I am concerned about their reputation. Lastly, I would just hope that the IDA might see fit to call a special meeting and make a corrective and try to address some of these issues before it's a problem. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lamar. Okay. Next item on the agenda is discussion, decision on approvals for item A, resolution number 24-1592, a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the substantial amendment, third, to the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Annual Action Plan Fiscal Year 2019 and 5-year Consolidated Plan 2019 to 2023 for the city of Douglas. Ms. Gonzalez?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. As evidenced by you, we held our public hearing in advance of tonight's meeting for approval of this item. I'm going to briefly recap why we're here and requesting the substantial amendment. City of Douglas is a CDBG entitlement community, and therefore we receive CDBG funds for community projects. Under the CARES Act, the city was allocated in 2 separate allocations, a total of $200,518 for coronavirus eligible projects. We had previously entered into an agreement with one of our local nonprofits to establish a community garden, and that project fell through. So we are looking to reallocate the funding in the amount of $22,913.23 for contactless water stations to be placed at public facilities in the low and moderate income census tracts in Douglas. And I would like to correct myself. During the public hearing, I stated that the contactless stations run from $4,000 and up. It's actually less than that. They run about $2,200 and up, which would allow us to purchase potentially up to 8 and place them in locations at public facilities throughout the low and moderate income census tracts. So we are recommending approval tonight, and I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. May I have a motion to approve resolution number 24-1592?
Mayor Pro Tem. I move that mayor and council approve resolution number 24-1592.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Acosta, a second by Councilmember Valdenegro. Any further questions?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Comments? Mr. Lindemann?
Yeah, that's such a great idea. You know, in this day and age, you can go to any college campus and walk around and they've got water stations available, you know, and this is a wonderful idea. And I hope in the future that we can expand it to other areas that aren't included in this particular funding, you know, such as maybe the police station or a visitor center, or, you know, it's a wonderful idea, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Grijalva?
You know, since we were discussing locations, I remember the last time I went through the golf course, that one's pretty beat up. Does that section qualify for that? No.
Unfortunately, no. Councilmember Grijalva, the golf course is not located within a low and moderate income census tract.
Thank you.
Mr. Valdenegro?
Ms. Gonzalez, what about our placita right here in Gianna?
Councilman Valdenegro, Mayor Pro Tem Morales, we do already have a water station at Placita Park. It's not a contactless station, but a station already exists there. That was why that was not one of the locations that was considered. But we could have more discussions if that's a consideration.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Ms. Acosta?
How long do you think that this project will take for all of the water stations to be operational?
It will depend on lead time for getting the water stations ordered and delivered. Haven't checked supply chain if there's any issues with those. And then establishing whether a concrete slab already exists for placement, or if staff has to pour one, and a water source available. So we may have to do some work for some of these, We're hoping to get them done rather quickly so that we can fully expend all of the funding that we have left.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, council? None? All right, roll call.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales.
Yes. Motion carries. Item number 5 is presentation discussion. Item A, Community Services Master Plan Draft by Pros Consulting. Smith?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, members of the public and staff. Last year, Pros Consulting worked on developing our Community Services Master Plan. As you recall, the purpose of a master plan is to provide us a roadmap for our future investment in recreational experiences, parks, and facilities over the next 10 years. The master plan focuses on identifying the city's current and future recreation needs and help aid decision makers, staff in providing equitable distribution of recreational facilities and opportunities to Douglas residents and stakeholders. The goal of tonight's presentation is to share with you the final draft that is prepared by Pros Consultant and entertain any questions or feedback that you may have. The plan is included in your packet, but you also have a presentation that's going to be presented by our consultant, Mike. He will be attending virtually to present the draft of the master plan and review the recommendations. So without further ado, Mike, you in? Just checking in?
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate the opportunity to present.
Hey, Mike, can you speak a little louder? I think we're at full volume here.
Sure. Can you hold on 1 second? Let me check one thing. Okay, can you hear me now? You cannot hear me?
Put on volume so the same.
Can you hear
Can you
me?
try going closer to the mic?
Yes, I'm as close as I can be.
Oh,
That's
much better.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, I will do that. Hold on 1 second here. Let me get myself situated. That's better?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. Thank you much for Mayor Pro Tem, council, staff, members of the public. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you all this evening. Again, as Jennifer mentioned, this is just kind of an overview of the final draft, and really looking for any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions that you would like to see incorporated into the draft, so that we can make the master plan final and hopefully put it before you for adoption. So as mentioned, I will share my participant screen sharing is currently disabled. I know you all are working on it diligently. There we go. Thank you much. Great. Okay, so we'll share my screen and walk you through this quick presentation.
Oh, no.
I know that there is a lot here on this agenda, but I promise I will get through this fairly quickly. I think one of the big keys associated with the master plan is recognizing the potential future growth of Douglas that's tied to the second port of entry. That is going to take your community really from about currently somewhere around 20,000 folks up to about 30,000. So adding about 10,000 people to your community and 10,000 potential users of your park and recreation system. One key driver for us was to assess your existing park system. We looked at access and connectivity, we looked at physical condition, and we looked at just the overall functionality of the park system. Overall, the park system rated pretty well. As you would expect, you do have grades that range from excellent being an A, and a couple of locations that are poor. But really, at the end of the day, I think it's important to recognize that you have a pretty strong park and recreation system that you can build on. That at the end of the day is really going to need some love in the future, just to ensure that you have a system that is in repair and safe for people to use. In terms of highest priority needs, this was information we shared with you last fall. But again, in terms of programs and services from a recreation perspective, it really dots across a lot of different types of programs, active activities such as fitness and wellness, to low-cost community events and water fitness classes. Then you also have kind of cooking classes, performing arts, education classes as well. In terms of the library, this is what we typically see. A lot of utilization by a community library for both kids and adults. Technology has certainly worked its way into the library world, and you can see a number of different high priority programs and services tied to technology, such as wireless access, computer programs, access to public computers, downloading materials, website, online research. But again, library programs for adults and kids, as well as literacy programs, are certainly very high on your spectrum. In terms of what people want out of your park and recreation system, trails and opportunities to walk, whether it be urban trails, walking, biking trails, hiking trails, indoor walking tracks, all kind of were in the top 3 of 4. Interestingly enough, and based on what you just said about the CDBG project, community gardens is certainly high on your list. So something to continue to pursue, whether it be in partnership or on your own, as an opportunity, if you look to repurpose any part of your existing park system or add to it in the future. The other thing I kind of want to point out is that there is 2 really high needs associated with indoor space. Actually 3 of those: indoor walking tracks, indoor fitness equipment, and then indoor event, party, and meeting space, are all tied to a need associated with a community center and/or a recreation center. In terms of how do we use the information from parks assessments and community need, this really kind of looks at starting to establish what we call level of service. So in essence, how much of any one thing do you need to provide to your public? Programs and services, experiences are very much tied to the public spaces and places that you have available. This is just typical human nature, not necessarily just tied to the park and recreation world. If you were to have a baby shower or a wedding shower, one of the first things you think about is a location in which you're going to have it. It's hard to have an experience without a space or a place. So what we do is we start to look at your existing parks and we look at community need and say, how does this impact the needed spaces and places that you are required? So there's a lot of different variables that go into what we call a population-based standard for level of service. Community need, current level of service, population growth, as well as financial sustainability and a bunch of other kind of factors that I won't spend a lot of time reading through, but there's a long chapter within the master plan that explains this even in greater detail. Long story short is how many park acres do you need in the future to support the needs and experiences that are desired? So We're currently looking at a current level of service of about 8.51 acres per 1,000. That does not include the golf course or any of the special use parks or linear parks, so to speak. It's just tied to pocket parks, neighborhood parks, and community parks. We're not recommending to increase that level of service, but because of your growth or projected growth of 10,000 people, this basically is going to provide a need for you to provide an additional 75 acres of parkland if you're going to manage and maintain that 8.5 acres per 1,000 people. In terms of indoor square footage, you really have limited square footage right now indoors. It's really more storage and small spaces and places. This does not take into account the library, but this takes into account that need for gymnasium space, indoor meeting space, indoor walking tracks, indoor fitness, and looking at it through the lens of a recommended level of service of just 1 square foot per person. You're in need of about 27,000 to 30,000 square foot of space. In terms of cost estimating, so how does this translate to what it's going to cost? And I know this is always where the rubber starts to meet the road. I want to make sure you recognize that this is just cost estimating for capital improvements. As part of the master plan, there is a capital improvement plan, but that is not meant to be synonymous with your budget process. It is just a recommendation for how you would go about improving your park system in terms of the infrastructure. So long time ago when we did a cook-off meeting, we mentioned that we look at capital improvements in 3 buckets. A sustainable bucket is really just kind of taking care of what you already have, replacing a playground for a playground or a ramada for a ramada, tennis courts for tennis courts. Expanded services is really how do you take your existing park system and add to the experiences to better meet community need. This could be like adding loop trails or adding ramadas. And we've identified a few opportunities within your park system where you could do that. The vision area is always where the most cost is associated with it. This is really new parks, new facilities, really complete renovation, and even some potential planning opportunities fall into the visionary bucket. So when we, and hopefully everybody's sitting down, but when we look at this through the next 10 years, so I think it's important to recognize that this is a 10-year planning horizon, that we're looking at sustainable projects or just life cycle replacement associated with your park system of in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 million. This is just taking care of what you already have. Part of this cost is, a potential cost associated with just reinvesting in A Street Pool as it is right now. As mentioned, we have some small limited expanded service projects. And then we also have a large visionary bucket here of about 24 million. So you'll probably ask what's driving so much of this cost. It really here's kind of what is driving the big picture costs. The life cycle replacement, as mentioned, is about 5.7 million. 20 million of that $30 million is really tied to Airport Park, an opportunity to expand that park to better meet community need. Athletic field expansion, dog park, relocation of the skate park, restrooms, parking, ramadas, loop trail. It would be 60 acres worth of park development at the tune of about $20 million. And then, as mentioned, we do have some other smaller planning opportunities. A cemetery master plan is something you could undertake. A feasibility study to determine if the golf course is the most appropriate use of that property in the long term for your community. A library master plan that would obviously have to consider expansion I don't believe your current library will be large enough for an additional 10,000 people in your community. A recreation center feasibility study that would look at determining whether or not it's appropriate for you to think about constructing a recreation center and whether or not that's something that you should look to do, in partnership with either the schools or the private sector, or even nonprofits. And then the other big dollar amount here is looking at a new potential aquatic center associated with Veterans Park and the 8th Street Pool. I know that you have received a report on this and recognizing that that is a big dollar amount. So if you really looked at this and you said what's really making up $30 million, it's a $20 million airport park expansion, 5.7 million associated with life cycle replacement, and about 4 million associated with improving or replacing 8th Street Pool. So a lot of big picture, but a lot of dollars associated with new projects associated with the overall capital improvement plan. So funding strategies, there's a lot of detail associated with this in the master plan, but obviously I think your primary funding sources are going to be grants, including CDBG funds, enter any sort of capital improvement dollars that come through your general fund budget, any sort of general obligation bond that might be something that you look to pursue associated with the growth in your community, impact fees associated with growth, and then any sort of partnerships. Really, the strategic implementation focuses on maintaining that 8.5 acres per 1,000, really looking at any opportunities to create trails or connect trails in your community, or just improving what you have, taking care of what you already have associated with your existing parkland, continuing to increase programming. But of course, as mentioned before, this is going to require spaces and places to support that programming. Operations and staffing will likely need to grow if your park system grows and your population grows. And then, of course, ensuring that you have financial sustainability. You don't want to take on the construction of anything new or building anything new if you don't have the adequate operations and maintenance dollars, and also the opportunity to reinvest in anything. So again, continue to take care of what you already have. But the financing of the park system is obviously where the rubber will meet that road. So our next steps are editing the master plan document based on any feedback that you all provide, and then the consideration of adoption of the master plan on a future city council agenda, and usually that is done on consent. So at this point, I will take any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions that you may have.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? Ask.
Mayor Pro Tem, I just had one idea, perhaps, and of course, this is just an idea. But if we are having a lot of money to put into the 8th Street pool, would it be more feasible to turn that into a ball field, which there's a need for that too, and expand the aquatic center into a water park?
I would, so that's an interesting thought. And it's not a thought that I incorporated into the master plan simply because you had the assessment done that looked at 3 different options associated with the 8th Street Pool, and the that idea that you just mentioned was not associated with one of those 3 concepts. I would go so far as to say, though, that I don't believe, I'm not a landscape architect, but thinking about Veterans Park, having been there, having spent some time there, I don't believe that you have enough acreage associated with where that pool is that would support the kind of athletic field expansion that you're going to need. Currently, as you all know, the athletic fields at Airport Park are wonderful, but they're also multi-purpose in nature, in which they get shared by both soccer as well as baseball and softball. I think the idea with the Airport Park expansion would be to create some dedicated fields that are very specific to Diamond, very similar to the D-back field that you have, but more of those, as well as dedicated soccer and rectangular fields that in turn could be used, more year round. So those are just kind of my initial thoughts. I don't necessarily. I would also say that your concept or your thought about kind of putting the outdoor pool associated with the indoor pool makes a lot of sense, because of you're having aquatics go through one building, one checkpoint. You can share locker rooms and so on and so forth. So I would say that concept or that thought of maybe relocating the pool, so that it's basically a part of your aquatic center, so you kind of have this indoor-outdoor experience is certainly something that could and should be looked at.
And one final thought is the city already partners with the school district on the aquatic center.
Correct.
So it just seemed logical to me to maybe expand that, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lennon. Anyone else from the council?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Grijalva?
We've been discussing for a while abandoned houses and what are we going to do with them? If we knock them down, we take over the property. What are we going to build another house? What are we going to do? I think this is the discussion when we're talking about demolition and abandoned houses, where maybe these pocket parks can be essential to the community. On Tompkins and 21st, there's been an abandoned house there for years. And there's a lot of kids around the community that could benefit from a pocket park, have something to do. They don't have to go all the way to 15th Street Park, maybe just hang out there close to home. I know it's not like back in the day when we were younger where you go home and the sun goes down. Now you have cell phones, you could call them, but just to, beautify our community too, instead of seeing all these beat up houses, abandoned lots, maybe it could be useful for a pocket park. Thank you.
Anyone else? I did have a question. I was wondering, on the parks upgrades, there's nothing in there for Castro Park, and I know we use that one like for Douglas Days and there's other events. What about like remodeling the restrooms there or the band stage, upgrading the sound system? Because we use that park is used quite a bit.
Yeah, let me see here. Were you referring to which park? I'm sorry.
The Castro Park or 10th Street Park? I don't see it. I didn't.
Raul Castro Park.
Oh, Castro.
Yeah, we do have about $300,000 worth of life cycle replacement associated with that. Some concrete replacement, restroom replacement, performance area. So we do have about $300,000 allocated as part of that 5.7 million to Castro Park.
Mayor Pro Tem, you didn't see that in the presentation, but in that big packet that you have, those are the details that kind of line out what we're moving forward with.
We didn't get that.
I'll print it for you. I'll have it in your.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Nothing further? No. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Next item is item number 5B, proposed mapping of innovative community overlay zoning districts in 12 delineated areas within the city of Douglas. Mr. Osborne?
Good evening, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I believe we have a presentation available. A rather visual item looking at amending our zoning districts map for 12 areas around the city of Douglas where I saw a flash of it like lightning. But these areas, the intent of the proposals is to recognize that these properties are in many cases non-conforming with our development standards for the zoning districts that they're currently located in. We're not taking away their current zoning, not the potential of their current zoning. We're simply offering opportunities for those properties to be further developed, to have additions of residential or commercial to be allowed that would be possible with these proposed overlays. And so we're also looking to allow a variety of new housing types with the regulations that we adopted last year, especially in the innovative community residential overlay and to some extent in the innovative community mixed use overlay. Multiple detached residences and or limited detached accessory commercial would be allowed on parcels that are designated in the innovative community mixed use, and for residential only in the innovative community residential. It would allow for also, these three overlays would allow for parcel split approvals to create parcels that are 3,000 square foot lots, whereas currently we have a 6,000 square foot minimum for not only for single family residential 6,000 zoning, but also for mobile home residence zoning. These splits would have to have certificates or records of survey prepared, but for the opportunity to split properties, but also recognizing that we do have some properties within the city of Douglas that are substandard in size, that these overlays will provide them with being legal and conforming with our regulations. The setbacks for innovative community residential at the front and side are 4 feet, but 5 feet from any other structures on or off site to recognize that there could be opportunities for infill development. We receive a lot of applications for accessory dwelling units, but also a lot of interest in properties being split. The innovative community commercial and ICMU mixed use overlay setbacks are 0 feet from property lines, but 5 feet from any structures on or off site. And the rear setback is 0 feet when an alley is present, but 5 feet otherwise. We find that a number of our areas that are zone commercial, the development standards that we have, whether it's limited commercial or general commercial, require rather exceptional suburban style setbacks and restrictions on parking and amount of parking. And many of these properties just cannot provide what our code requires them to do. And without having a variance request or without properties being combined in a large amount, we're not going to see commercial development in those areas. The off-street parking requirements are relaxed in the innovative community overlays. And also we're allowing for adaptive reuse in the innovative community commercial and mixed use overlays. The international building codes, which we may be bringing forward, or actually we will be bringing forward in the next month, some proposed amendments to those codes. Nonetheless, those codes still apply, as do the engineering standards and FEMA regulations and any state health laws. The notification for projects in these areas would be made the responsibility of applicants. Whereas in the mixed use infill overlay district that we do have designated for much of our downtown, or actually all of our downtown, all the way over from Pan American to A Avenue.
Mayor Pro Tem. Can I interrupt you, Mr. Osborne, just
Please.
for a quick question? When you say the off-street parking requirements are relaxed, what are they now?
Right now with general commercial, I think the standards are based on use, which oftentimes would say that we need to have 5 off-street parking spaces for 1,000 square feet of retail space, for instance. If we have an existing retail on A Avenue that is 1,000 square feet, most likely they don't have 5 parking spaces, or they have, again, more amount of retail than parking because they were developed. Those properties were developed before our zoning code. And so it's very challenging for those properties to do anything to improve their properties or expand their use where they are close walking proximity to residents that are right around them. We have residential neighborhoods that are well served by A Avenue, or at least could be. But if somebody wanted to do a use like a restaurant or something like that, we wouldn't be able to permit it. under the current regulations, because we would require them to have all sorts of parking, where the assumption back in the days that these places were built was that people would be walking or they'd be driving cars that were maybe 10 square feet in size. Right. So we're looking at the future as possibly being a little bit more like the past for certain areas of the city where we already have development. And that's what these innovative community overlays really address, the areas of our city that are already developed. And how do we encourage them to continue to receive investment and not to discourage them by having them have to go to conditional use permit or a variance request or any number of other processes that would take months and cost money.
So we're talking about bringing back the old neighborhood grocery type of thing.
Providing that opportunity, indeed.
Because I'm in mind, I can see or remember that there are a number of buildings here that used to be grocery stores, and they've got maybe a parking spot in the front, but it's a street.
Right.
So is that what we're meaning to relax the parking?
I think that's exactly what we have in mind. An excellent example is the little snack shop that's over in the area around a laundromat. It's very popular, but if we required them to have the parking, it would make it very hard for them to reinvest in their property.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And so notification, may I continue? Thank you for your question. It's a very good question. Thank you. The notification for projects would be made the responsibility of applicants. We're currently in the mixed use infill. It says that city staff would be responsible for notification. What we're looking at, these opportunities are for neighbors to talk to their neighbors about what they would like to do that may be more like the old regulations or the lack of regulations before planning and zoning. But we would require proof of that effort to outreach, whether it's certified mail or a petition. Right. So we would be looking for folks to come into us with their applications for permits and have a pre-application meeting, determine whether or not their proposal would meet the innovative community overlay that they're located in. And if so, we then say, please move forward with your outreach effort to your neighbors immediately surrounding your property and provide us with the proof that you've done that. And then we can actually move into permitting. There's a long list. 12 areas that we've addressed separately because there's enough of a distinction in location that if there's any question, we can separate these out. But again, for all of these, the main theme is that they are currently legal non-conforming and their zoning either doesn't allow them to expand their use or the zoning doesn't even allow the use that's there. The first, and I'll try to address these quickly to make sure we hit it on our time. The overlock additions, I'm just abbreviating as that, is ZMA 2023-1. Areas entirely zoned mobile home residence. What we found is that only about 30% of the properties that are located in this area, that's to the west is bound by 8th Avenue, to the east by Washington Avenue, and between, I believe it's 19th and 23rd and 24th rather. These properties are all zoned mobile home residents, but only 30% are mobile homes. We have a significant number of older single family residences that precede 1966 and zoning, but we also have a number of non-conforming permits that were issued for single family residential. This overlay of innovative community residential for the most of the area here would allow for single family residences, would also allow for those lot splits we talked about where we already do have a number of properties that are substandard in size, and also would allow for mixed use, innovative community mixed use along 8th Avenue where we already have commercial uses that are located in a mobile home residence zone. The second, call it the north end, west side of 8th Avenue. This tackles all of the area that is along the west side, north of 10th and 8th Avenue, where it's zone general commercial. The development standards, again, require 40-foot setbacks from any street. Many of these properties are corner properties. And so there's almost no way we could see a development happen without a variance, without conditional use permits, any number of things that are just really laborious and difficult for our property owners. So the innovative community commercial overlay would allow those properties to continue in their use, to be able to expand where appropriate. And also the extended stay Douglas is on the east side of the street there. That would be designated for innovative community mixed use to allow for residential use if it was to convert over for residential rather than for a motel, but also to allow it to continue as it is. The East Side Innovative Community Mixed Use Overlay Zoning District Map Amendment, ZMA 2023-3. As you can see from this particular map, there are a number of different areas that are all addressed in close proximity to one another. This area is just most close to the Food City Shopping Center, but it includes, I think, just south of the Dollar General. It also includes parts of San Antonio Avenue, which it's kind of like centered around 10th and San Antonio. A number of properties in this area are zoned commercial but have residential use, or they have residential zoning and commercial use. And so those two things don't go together and require some sort of a rezone or, again, a conditional use permit or a variance request. This takes us out of that zone. We basically look at the properties that are there. Their existing uses are going to be fine with us. Or if, let's say, the Alco Theater wants to return to being a theater, they would be able to do that with this mixed use overlay. The few parcels that are along 15th, close to the high school and across the street from a multifamily development, the Country Club Edition Blocks 3 listed here as 2023-4. These are proposed for innovative community mixed use to allow for the existing use of the properties as general commercial, recognizing that the development standards can be relaxed to allow redevelopment in that area, whether it's commercial or even residential. If we have this need for housing, as I know we do, this could be an area where we might have a little bit of both. The Applewhite Edition Block 1, Lot 8, ZMA 2023-5, is the triangle property that's just across from Clawson Elementary. Is that correct? I believe it's Joe Carlson. Okay. Across from Joe Carlson. The city owns it, but that's not the reason for this. It's just simply that the property is undevelopable with the current zoning development standards. And so innovative community commercial would allow for development of the property to a higher and better use than a vacant lot. ZMA 2023-6, East Side Edition Blocks 3 and 8. This takes 3 properties that are zoned, both. There's a multifamily residential, but there's also limited commercial. Neither one of those is appropriate for the area that these parcels are in. And so we're looking at providing innovative community mixed use to, again, allow those to be legal conforming and to allow their potential to still be realized. ZMA 2023-7 is the Musgrave Edition, Blocks 38 and Block 38 and Block 39 in portions. This is off of 8th Street and close to, I believe, is the old bowling alley. These properties are all zone limited commercial, but they've been and continue to be residential properties, single family homes. This map amendment would allow them to retain their commercial development potential without taking anything from them. We're also recognizing that these are homes and they should be able to improve those as well. But if they wish to have a mix of commercial and residential, whether it's having a home office, they would be able to do that. ZMA 2023-11, we're going to the south end of downtown along G Avenue and F Avenues. Both of these areas have significant amounts of residential use and always have. The zoning districts that apply are limited commercial and general commercial, which again, the development standards require too much of these properties to be able to redevelop as commercial. These overlays, or the overlay of mixed use, innovative community mixed use, would allow these properties to continue to have that commercial opportunity while recognizing that these existing residences are also valuable to us in our community and that they could be able to improve those and even expand. ZMA 2023-12, the Railroad Edition. This is an area that is primarily zoned single family residential 6,000, with some areas within that's designated as mobile home residence. We don't have any mobile home residences in the areas that are zoned mobile home residence there. And in the single family residential 6 areas, we have properties that are substandard in size. And we also have older homes that possibly need a little more TLC and investment. We have a number of people who have been interested in splitting properties in this area, but we also have a significant amount of FEMA designated floodplain that makes investment very difficult, and cost accounting is very important in that. And so tiny homes or other homes that are smaller in size, smaller properties might be able to help us recognize or realize some development of residential in this area, designated as innovative community residential. The Sunspot South, under ZMA 2023-13, takes the Sunspot subdivision, Sunspot South subdivision, all 81 parcels, located off of Hohokam. And also, I think it's, my vision is such that I need to look here and see that, nope, that's still very small. But this area here as Sunspot South is mobile home residents, a significant amount of non-compliance with our codes, vacant properties or vandalized properties, squatters, any number of issues relating to police department reports. We've had people interested in developing single family residential in some of these properties, but they're unable to do so under the mobile home resident zone. So we're proposing an innovative community residential overlay. ZMA 2023-14, Rogers Avenue, north of Applewhite. We're looking at the northern half of that area that is currently zoned general commercial. As of recently, a proposal was adopted by mayor and council, but also the animal shelter property that's located across the street is zoned mobile home residence, which doesn't allow the current use. This overlay of innovative community mixed use would allow that and also potentially residential. To the south of those properties, the proposal is for innovative community residential to allow, again, the market demand for single family residential development, which we can't allow under our current mobile home residence zoning district. And for the final, we're looking at ZMA 2023-15, the North Douglas edition for blocks 11 and 12, and for 15 and 16, we're looking at areas that are zoned mobile home residence or zoned general commercial. There's a mismatch of uses in some of these areas where we have mobile home residences on a general commercial property, or we have the reverse. The innovative community mixed use overlay to the northern part is looking at allowing the mobile home park to continue, but also to encourage redevelopment for commercial if it's appropriate. And for the area that's designated innovative community residential is to allow single family residences to be constructed in that area. And the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of all of these proposals to allow legal conforming status and to increase infill development and redevelopment potential for each of the proposed overlay areas and the parcels within at the discretion of the owners. Before I open up to question, I would just like to also add that we had considered amending the zoning district regulations for these areas, but the tool that we were using with these overlays is really the most expedient and the most painless. If we were to look at any of the zoning districts and amending those regulations, we would have to mail to every property owner who has that zoning district. So if we touched any areas that were zoned single family residential 6, almost half of the city or more would have to receive a mail from us at our cost. And for anything that was designated limited commercial or general commercial, we would be mailing to Walmart and all the stores that are zoned general commercial as well. And so these overlays, again, provide us with the opportunity to have the owners choose what they would like to do with their property without taking any of their development potential away under the current zoning. So I'll be happy to answer your questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Does council have any questions or comments?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yeah, Mr. Osborne, I really think that this is another needed thing in the town, but if we're just going to zone or overlay some sections, I think that excludes some sections that over the years people have built, like they have casitas in their backyard that are non-conforming and have just been there over the years. And this is not going to take that into consideration if we only do those sections.
There may be areas that we haven't identified as part of this process, but with ironically enough, I actually had a property owner come in today to ask questions about the proposed overlay for their property in the Railroad Addition. And he confided in me that they actually do have a casita on their property. And so the regulations, if adopted, or if the map amendment is adopted for that area, that property owner's existing casita would be recognized as legal and conforming. So I mean, there are still properties that we are getting in these areas that I think will have that benefit, but if there are others, those folks could still propose an amendment, or we could look at that further and see if there's areas where we could also, place these kinds of overlays in the future.
And that's good for the property owner because now they are legal and they don't have any problems. This came back in the 90s when I was on the P and Z. And, we're finally doing something about it. Congratulations. Because I remember those days.
Yeah, and two, there's even another overlay district that we do have and have had in the books that I think the intent of it sort of hit what some of this is doing here. The mixed use infill overlay development, overlay zoning district. The problem with that overlay is the way that its regulations were written is that the benefit of doing any of the good things that are laid out in the purpose statement are undercut by the fact that if you have a commercially zoned property, your underlying zone is commercial, there's no minimum lot size. But the benefits accrue to those properties that are substandard in lot size. And so if you don't have a substandard lot size, you don't get the impact fee waive. You don't get to develop any of those goodies, whether it's mixed use or additional residential. And so these innovative community overlays sort of jump through that. We basically are providing that actual connection, right, with the actual ability to do the mixed use where it's designated, or to increase the intensity for residential where it's appropriate, right, where our zoning districts aren't working, like the mobile home residence zone, it's not really working. We're not taking away anything from those folks who want to place mobile homes on those properties that are zoned mobile home residents, but for those who want another option, they would have that.
And I believe that comes with my basic premise that if you're a homeowner and you know how to do something on your property that you're paying taxes on, you should be allowed to do that. So I hope that carries through, and I know a lot of people that they say, well, grandma's getting up there, they got to have a place for her. So they build a room. That should be allowed.
There are quite a few folks who are already doing it. It's just they're not following our code.
Yeah.
And so this is going to provide a little more opportunity for them to have the cover of our regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr.
Valdenegro.
Mr. Osborne, can you give us an example, please? You said the homeowners on the Sunspot cannot, if their dwelling becomes condemned, they cannot build. They have to put another mobile home there? Or?
That's correct. In Sunspot South or any other mobile home residence zone area?
Residents from 19th Street on to 23rd?
Yes, that's correct. Our zoning code, it says single family residential is not allowed. It's a single unit of mobile home is what's allowed.
I don't see this as working. I mean, if I was a landlord and the home is condemned and I would love to build a structure, I think I should be able to build a home there.
The overlay would allow, the overlay of innovative community residential or mixed use would allow for that to happen.
So how can we change that misuse to Sunspot?
Oh, for innovative community residential is what's proposed there. And so they would be able to do a single family residential build on those properties.
But they wouldn't be able to put a home in case like the people from 19th Street on to 20th, like you just said, a multi-home. The first residence that you said, where a person can put anything on their property as long as they're the homeowner, right?
We don't address the question of homeownership versus rentership is something that we don't regulate. If we are looking at the number of units on a property, that's a different question, but under innovative community residence, that would allow for that to happen if proposed. And again, neighbor notifications being involved as well. But if our regulations that are already on the books for innovative community overlays, if they allow for those uses in those amounts, then we can approve those requests, right? When they provide us with building plans and with site plans that show that
home will go under the manufacturers or the mobile, a tiny home.
they could do those things in the innovative community residence zone, overlay zone. They could do manufactured housing. They could do mobile home. They could do single family residential. They
Well,
could
not
do
sometimes.
in sunspots too. In sunspots as proposed, they would also have that opportunity. Any zone that is zoned mobile home residence right now only allows a mobile home residence by our code.
By changing this, it
But-
will allow them to have everything.
Yes, it will allow maximum flexibility, maximum choice. The property owner will choose. We're not taking anything away. So it's not like we're saying, hey, this is no longer allowed for mobile homes. If somebody wants to locate a mobile home in a mobile home residence zone, they can still do so. But if they want to build a single family house, we have the ability to process permits for that too, under these proposals.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Acosta?
It sounds like to me like there's just a smorgasbord of construction all over town. So why wouldn't we look at putting this overlay across Douglas? Yeah.
Next step. Let's say, my
I mean, is
recommendation.
there a reason why we wouldn't want to do that?
I think when you look at like properties that are already conforming with our codes, that for those folks, most likely, they're satisfied with how their neighborhood is. Their opportunities are already kind of exercised, or the property sizes are fit with their neighborhood.
Mhm.
Whereas with the areas we've identified, they're already not
Kind of
conforming.
mixed use.
Yeah, they're already not conforming.
Mhm.
And so this is just to make recognition that the existing situations of these places is a bit unique compared to most others. Druthers to be had, the mixed use infill overlay would probably be the next thing that I would think about, like actually like making changes to, but that would require all properties that have that designation to be notified. But yeah, that again, and for the reason that it requires you to be substandard in size. Doesn't say that if you are, no, it says you've got to be substandard in size to be considered an infill parcel. And so if you've got a vacant parcel, you could build a house, but could you do could you do a duplex? No. Could you do 4 units on a corner property, like some of the colonias we have, like in, like off of H Avenue? No, you can't actually. You can't. You can only do a maximum of 3, and they all have to be in one building. The innovative community overlays allow for separation of buildings while still allowing the mixing of uses, or just more of the residential use or commercial use. Allows for innovation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm with Councilmember Acosta. I would have went to do the whole thing and it makes it easier. I just have a suggestion, when we have these presentations and the phrase legal conforming, they're not legal conforming. That brings sort of a disconnect with our constituents. Because if I built a house and I wasn't allowed to build a house, my questions would be, well, if I'm not legal conforming, why did the city back then give me the permits to do it? And if I'm not, how did the city not know that I was building a house that was not conforming? Like in my ward, we had an overlay because of the mobile, where it was mobile home, there was residential. When there was residential, it was supposed to be mobile home. When we annexed that area, that was the city's responsibility to say, hey, this isn't allowed here, let's rezone. But to come years and years later and say, hey, you're not legally conforming, now it has to pass or something's going to happen. That brings a hostility with our constituents. I just think that we need to sometimes get out from here, our mindset, and have the same mindset of the people that are sitting in these seats, or the same people that are at home, look at it from their lens. And that's why I would just say when we say not legally conforming, I think we need to, bridge that gap and say, hey, we messed up. If it was us, if we didn't know you were building that house, if we give you the permits and you weren't supposed to do it, our bad, but now we're trying to fix the situation. That's the only suggestion I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Osborne, and this will be
Thank you.
coming to Mayor and Council at our March meeting
Yes, with ordinances.
with ordinances. Yeah. Thank you. Last item on the agenda is adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Costa, a second by Mr. Grijalva to adjourn our meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned at 6:44 PM.
Have a good evening, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Guys.